I had recently found myself in a tough spot. The stress of being laid off from my job was weighing heavily on my mind, and I felt like I needed a break from the constant worry and anxiety. Seeking solace and distraction, I decided to visit a local bar to unwind and maybe forget my troubles for a little while. As I entered the dimly lit establishment, the low hum of conversations and clinking glasses filled the air. I found a seat at the bar and ordered a drink, hoping it would help me relax. Not long after, two friendly-looking tourists struck up a conversation with me. They seemed genuinely interested in my city and asked for recommendations on places to visit during their stay. Being a local, I was more than happy to help and shared some of my favorite spots. As the night wore on, the bar became livelier, and I decided it was time to head home. I bid farewell to the tourists and stepped out into the cool night air. On my way home, I couldn't help but replay the events of the night in my mind. The encounter with the tourists had been pleasant, and it had been nice to take my mind off my problems for a little while. But as I continued walking, I noticed that the same two men I had met at the bar were now walking behind me. At first, I thought it was merely a coincidence, but their presence began to make me uneasy. They approached me and asked if I could help them with something, but they were vague about what exactly they needed. I politely declined, feeling a sense of discomfort growing within me. As I continued walking, I became acutely aware of someone else lurking nearby, just out of sight. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and my heart started pounding in my chest. Something was off, and my instincts told me to get out of there as quickly as possible. I picked up my pace, and the two men seemed to follow suit. My heart was now racing, and I felt a knot of fear tightening in my stomach. I didn't know what their intentions were, but I knew I didn't want to stick around to find out. Without looking back, I broke into a run, my footsteps echoing through the deserted streets. The men shouted after me, but I didn't stop. I kept running until I reached the safety of my apartment building. Once inside, I locked the door and caught my breath. The relief of being safe washed over me, but my mind was still racing. Who were those men, and what did they want from me? And who was the person lurking in the shadows? I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped a dangerous situation. The mystery of the men's intentions haunted me, leaving me with a lingering sense of unease. From that night on, I became more cautious and vigilant, always looking over my shoulder and trusting my instincts. It was a chilly autumn night, and the air was tinged with a hint of mystery as the leaves rustled on the streets outside. The bar was relatively quiet, a few regulars chatting at the counter, and a couple playing pool in the corner. Everything seemed typical until the door creaked open, and a tall, lanky figure stepped in, casting an eerie shadow as he did so. The stranger wore a worn-out coat that seemed out of place for the season, and his face was partially obscured by a low-brimmed hat. He walked straight to a corner table, avoiding any eye contact with others, and sat down with his back facing the rest of the bar. Something about him set my nerves on edge, but I brushed it off as simple unease at encountering a new face in our small, tight-knit community. As the night wore on, I kept an eye on the mysterious man, but he remained in his corner, barely moving or acknowledging anyone around him. When closing time approached, I made my way over to him, intending to politely inform him that we were closing up for the night. However, as I got closer, a chill ran down my spine, and an overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. The stranger's eyes seemed vacant, devoid of any emotion or recognition. It was as if he was in some kind of trance, and my attempts at communicating with him went unanswered. I decided to call the police, unsure of what else to do in the situation. As the clock struck the last minute of operation, the bar was finally empty, except for the strange man in the corner. I began locking up, my heart pounding in my chest. As I turned to head to the back, the man suddenly sprang to his feet, his movements erratic and disoriented. Without warning, he charged towards me, and instinct took over as I dove behind the bar for cover. Time seemed to slow down as I huddled there, my breaths coming fast and shallow. The sound of crashing and objects being knocked over echoed through the bar. When I dared to glance up, I saw the man had knocked over chairs and tables in his frenzy. Thankfully, the police arrived soon after, and the sudden arrival of flashing lights seemed to snap the man out of his trance. but by the time the officers made their way inside, he was nowhere to be found. The bar was in disarray, evidence of his violent outburst. The police searched the area thoroughly, but it was as if the strange man had vanished into thin air. In the aftermath, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that clung to the bar. The incident left me with more questions than answers. Who was that man? And what had triggered his alarming behavior? It was a night that I'll never forget. A night that made me question the perceived safety of my small town. And a night that forever left a chilling impression on my mind. Last Friday, my best friend Mark got promoted, and we decided to celebrate at a local bar. The place was buzzing with excitement, laughter, and loud music. We clinked our glasses, cheering to his success and the prospect of a fun-filled night ahead. As the night wore on, the bar became more crowded, and the drinks kept flowing. We were having a blast, dancing and enjoying the company of old and new friends alike. However, as the clock struck midnight, it was time to call it a night and head home. As we made our way toward the exit, I noticed a group of people outside, and my eyes fell on a woman who seemed heavily intoxicated, barely able to stand. My heart sank as I saw a man approaching her, pretending to be a taxi driver and urging her to get into his car. Alarm bells started ringing in my head, and without thinking, I rushed over to intervene. Mark followed close behind, sensing the urgency in my actions. I could tell that the woman was in no condition to make a safe decision, and I couldn't let her fall victim to whatever malicious intentions this man might have. "Hey, is everything okay here?" I asked, trying to sound as authoritative as possible. The man looked surprised, clearly caught off guard by my sudden intervention. Yeah, she's just my friend," he stammered, attempting to brush off the situation. But I wasn't buying it. "She's clearly not in a state to be making any decisions right now," I retorted, trying to keep my voice steady. "I think it's best if you step away and leave her alone." The man's expression turned hostile, but I stood my ground, refusing to back down. "I'm calling the police," I warned, pulling out my phone to make it clear I meant business. Suddenly, Mark stepped forward, a determined look on his face. "And I'm taking a picture of your license plate," he announced, snapping a quick photo. The man seemed to realize that we were serious, and he took a few steps back, cursing under his breath. He got into his car and sped away, leaving us with the woman who was now visibly distressed and confused. We stayed with her, trying to comfort her and reassure her that she was safe. We called a cab for her, making sure she got home okay. After she left, we reported the incident to the bar staff, hoping they could take further action if needed. As we walked home, my heart was still racing from the adrenaline and the realization of how close she had come to danger. It was a sobering experience, a stark reminder of the dangers that lurk in the world, even in seemingly safe places like a busy bar. I couldn't shake off the feeling that we had made a difference that night, that our intervention had possibly saved that woman from a dangerous situation. But it also left me with a sense of unease, knowing that there were people out there who would take advantage of others in vulnerable states.